Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at Tom's Town from Art of Play. This deck was designed by Kevin Cantrell Studios. Kevin's the guy behind a few other really well-known decks, including the elegant Standards decks from Art of Play and the magnificent Tavern on the Green decks from Theory 11, one of my favorite Theory 11 decks. But this particular deck was actually part of a larger branding campaign that Kevin was enlisted to do for Tom's Town Distilling Company in Kansas City, Missouri. As part of that campaign, he did all of their design work from their bottles to their website, but also, of course, produced a deck of cards. And that's what we're looking at here. So let's get into it, find out what the cards and the deck are all about. Now, starting with the name Tom's Town, both the deck and the distillery are named for Tom Pendergast. Tom Pendergast was a notorious political boss in Kansas City in the 1920s and 1930s. He was responsible for helping to get a lot of the officials in the area elected, often through kind of corrupt methods. But as a result of that, he had tremendous political influence, and he wielded that influence to create one of the most permissive sets of law enforcement pretty much anywhere in the country. At a time when Prohibition was reigning in the US and basically alcohol was completely banned everywhere in the US, you could go to Kansas City, you could find speakeasies, jazz clubs, bars, gambling, brothels, pretty much any sort of debauchery that you wanted, to the point where Kansas City became known as the Paris of the Plains. Pretty much a place where you could go and find anything that you wanted, and Tom Pendergast pretty much ruled it all. He ran the city, if you will. Now, there was a lot of crime, of course, that went with that, and so that's why he became sort of a notorious leader of the time. But a really interesting figure, and the story of Tom and of Kansas City is beautifully told in this deck. Starting with the tuck case, it's just done on a matte black cardstock, and it's covered with gold foil and beautiful embossing all the way throughout. Main feature is the large banner in the center that just says Tom's Town Distilling Company. Obviously the distillery, a more modern creation, but given a nod to that Prohibition past. And then you have tons of Art Deco elements all the way around. Very architectural looking, lots of like columns and arches. You have some banners with Kansas City and United States mentioned at the top. And then you have over here an image of a rabbit on one side and a goat on the other, both looking pretty dapper in their tuxedos. The rabbit and the goat are part of the Tom Pendergast history. The goats were what the Tom Pendergast faction, basically all of his supporters, became known as. They were the goats. And he had a rival faction called the rabbits that were ruled by Joe Shannon. The two of them were rivals for basically the same set of political leaders, but in that area, Tom Pendergast really definitely became the dominant one of the two. They always, though, maintained a little bit of a rivalry. At the bottom here, you have kind of a classic gangster era car. It looks like a Studebaker or something like that. And then you have the horse race represented over here on the side. Horse racing was one of Tom's biggest vices. He gambled incessantly. You got the website for Tom's Town, a little monogram, and then down here, tagline for the distillery, "The people are thirsty." A beautiful design on the front of the tuck case. On the sides here, you've got playing cards with USKC at the top. On the other side, big bold letters for Tom's Town. Bottom has your ad copy for Kevin Cantrell, Art of Play, and Tom's Town. And on the top, this says Tom's Town. The back here, this is not the back design of the cards, but you see that tagline in big, bold letters calling out "The people are thirsty." This tagline actually comes from a quote that's attributed to Tom Pendergast when asked how he justified basically flouting all the laws of the US and spreading alcohol throughout the Kansas City area. His answer was simply, "The people are thirsty." And then it's finished out here with a beautiful red and gold shiny tuck seal as Tom's Town on the top and on the bottom, and it's beautifully shaped in this sort of die cut look. Very nice, unique red tuck seal there. As you open up the inner flap, you have one more picture of a goat, another nod to Tom's supporters, Kansas City, United States, lots of extra gold elements there. You have the Kevin Cantrell logo on one side and the Tom's Town monogram on the other. That double T then is patterned to make this Art Deco inspired design for the interior of the tuck case that goes all the way through, just finishing the elegance of the deck off in style. So beautiful tuck case inside and out. One of my favorite tuck cases in my collection. I think they did an absolutely fantastic job with this one. From the embossing to the gold foil, the detailing, just really well done. So that is the tuck case, but I want to take a look at the cards too. So we'll start with the back design, and here it is. A lot going on here, all done in gold metallic ink against a black background. I will admit it kind of borders on busy, but I love the details that are going on here. You have this sort of Art Deco looking building in the background labeled with Tom's Town Distilling Company. You have the banners in the center with "The People Are Thirsty." The rabbit and the goat for those rival factions make an appearance once again, and just lots of simple lined elements all done in that beautiful gold metallic ink. Like I said, a lot going on. It can definitely come across a little busy, but for me personally, I really like what's going on. Finishes out with a two-way back design, so it is completely reflected, and you have that nice thin white poker border to finish it out. So very nice back design, a lot going on. I like it. All right, now into the cards, and we'll start with the two jokers, and here they are. So once more, we have the goat and the rabbit represented on these nearly identical jokers. Both of them looking fancy in their red, gold, and black tuxedos. It says Joker at the bottom, and you've got the TJ Pendergast for Tom Pendergast, his signature there at the bottom. So there are the two of them, all done in really fine gold lines, gold metallic ink. Those fine lines are kind of a signature of Kevin Cantrell, I think. You know, that's a lot of his decks use that very similar style. So there's your two jokers. You also get a pair of ad cards. I wish they hadn't included the two ad cards and maybe done something a little different, like a gaff card. But you get a Kevin Cantrell Studio ad card on one, and then Tom's Town and Art of Play on the other. All done in black ink as well as some gold metallic. All right, now turning to the deck. All right, so we'll start with the aces. You get four beautifully designed aces. The ace of spades is definitely the power ace of the bunch, and it features the Tom's Town name in the center of a classic black spade pip. If you look in the background, you'll see elements of the city of Kansas City all the way around. Lots of detail, all in gold metallic ink. And you have little nods to its history of crime in that era as well. You've got the Studebaker gangster style car, complete with a little chalk outline of a body underneath. You've got the bank safe over here. It's been opened up with the bags of money. Love those little touches. Right in the center there, you've got the distilling company mentioned. Really beautiful design, and then some extra gold embellishment just finishing it out on the outside, including the Tom's Town Distilling Company mentioned at the bottom. Pretty small pip in the corner and a super thin ace index in the corner. A little bit on the harder side to read, but definitely in fitting with the rest of the style of the deck. The other three aces are nearly equal in their opulence, all done with the gold metallic ink details. The red diamond looks really great with that gold metallic ink. The other three aces, though, all give a nod to some of the spirits that are produced at Tom's Town. First here, you've got the bourbon whiskey on the ace of diamonds. The ace of clubs gives a nod to their craft gin. And there's your rabbit and goat making an appearance once more. And the heart is for the vodka. So there's the vodka mentioned on the ace of hearts. So really beautiful aces. The number cards are all, by the standards of the rest of the deck, fairly plain, nothing too special. Smaller pips than normal, so a lot more white space, only slight customizations on the pip. You get that really super thin pip and index in the corner. The only extra touch is when you get to the 10, you get this little circular element here. Not sure there's any particular meaning behind it, but it gives it a nice extra little touch in the center, a little bit of flair. The diamonds, more the same, just red and black, just like we're used to. There's your circular element on the 10 again. Clubs, again, slightly custom, not too much to say here. and into the hearts. A little shorter, rounder heart pips, but nice, easily recognizable. So that's the number cards. But like many custom decks, the real story of Tom Pendergast, of Kansas City, of the distillery, it's really told in the court cards. And I love these court cards. All of them are done in a very similar style, and they feature characters who are maybe unique, whether to Tom's story or just to Kansas City in general. Now, they're kind of done in this beautiful style with a sign on the side, almost like nightclub signs or speakeasy signs on every single one of these. So very fitting, because at the time in Kansas City, there were clubs everywhere. It was said that there were more clubs per capita in Kansas City than pretty much anywhere else in the world. Don't know if that was true, but that was sort of the inspiration for these background here. So lots of thin gold lines forming the design. The only pop of color is there in the center of the close, where you get a little bit of red, metallic gold, and black. But each one of them has a unique name for their club or building mentioned on the side, and a character in the center. So let's talk about who some of them are. All right, starting with this one. This one says over here, the White House, which is obviously where the President of the United States lives. Very fitting, because this is Harry Truman. Now, by most accounts, Harry Truman, his political career was pretty much launched by Tom Pendergast and his support. Tom helped to ensure that he became a judge early in his career, so you can see him there with the gavel in his hand. Also helped him eventually get elected as senator, which propelled him into the White House. So there's Harry Truman given the nod in the center. Beautiful two-way courts. The Queen of Spades. This is an interesting one. You can see here the name of the club is the Inferno. One of the most notorious of all the clubs in the area was one called Dante's Inferno, and it was known for its female impersonators that performed there. Males who would perform as women. One of the most famous from there was Lorelei Lynn, aka Eddie. He'd perform as Lorelei Lynn, and believe this is a depiction of her here. And you can see her with a wink, obviously with a little secret that she's hiding, that her name is really Eddie. So kind of a cool little touch there for the Inferno. The King of Spades. This is Tom himself. Of course he gets a card, and his club, none other than the Boss Club, because Tom Pendergast was undoubtedly the boss. You can see him there with the bowler hat and the bottle of liquor in his hands. Ironically, I mentioned that he had a vice for gambling. He actually didn't drink all that much. Gambling was really his primary vice, so not a big drinker, despite the fact that he clearly encouraged a lot of drinking in his town. So there's Tom Pendergast on the King of Spades. Now going to the Jack of Diamonds. This is one not necessarily from Tom's era, but a significant figure in Kansas City. You can see here the name of the building or the club is the KC Monarch Club. The Kansas City Monarchs were the baseball team in the area, and for 1 year, legendary player Jackie Robinson played there. This was before he would go on to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers, break the color barrier in Major League Baseball, and become a legend. But before that, he played for the Kansas City Monarchs, so he gets a place on the Jack of Diamonds. Obviously, significant piece in Kansas City history. Going to the Queen of Diamonds. You see the name of the club here is the Lotta Sax Appeal. Lotta Sax Appeal is the name of a song that was written by Mary Lou Williams. And this is her here in the center. She actually helped to write songs for a group that performed in Kansas City called Andy Kirk and the 12 Clouds of Joy. She played piano, she wrote a lot of their songs. Lotta Sax Appeal, aside from being a great name for a song, was one of her more famous songs. And this one is one of my favorite chords. I love the look on her face as she's sort of belting out a tune there. So there's Mary Lou on the Queen of Diamonds. And the King of Diamonds, we're going to stay in the jazz clubs. Jazz was huge at this era. And this one, we've got the Bird Lives on the sign over here. The Bird was the nickname for Charlie Parker, legendary saxophonist, and so he gets a place on the King of Diamonds. Can't talk about Kansas City in that era without talking about their history with jazz. All right, going to the Jack of Clubs. This is, call him an enemy to Tom Pendergast. This is the one who ultimately brought him down. The Barrister Bar, barrister, another name for lawyer, and this is U.S. Attorney Maurice Milligan. He was the one who led the 1939 prosecution for tax evasion, and finally brought the Pendergast Empire down. And you can see in his hand here, he's got Missouri Waltz, which is the name of his autobiography in which he detailed his exploits. So there he is, Maurice Milligan on the Jack of Clubs. All right, going to the Queen of Clubs. This is an interesting one. This is Nell Donnelly. She had a company that made clothing. You can see over here, the name is the Donnelly Company. Nell was highly successful in her company, became a multi-millionaire, and was ultimately kidnapped, held for ransom. They wanted to get money out of her family because she had so much of it, but she also, or her husband, had some friends with ties to Tom Pendergast. He made a few calls, and within a couple of days, she was rescued, her kidnappers were captured, and you know, the story kind of lives in history. So a little bit of an indirect tie to Tom Pendergast, and maybe kind of helps to have friends in high places, saved her from that kidnapping. All right, the King of Clubs. He is at the Rabbits Lounge. Of course, this is the leader of that rival faction, the Rabbits. This is Joe Shannon. And I mentioned that the leaders in that time, they really sort of derived all their power from the political leaders that they helped to support. So getting out the vote and getting the leaders that they wanted elected to get elected, even if that meant by corruption, that was a huge part of what they did. And so very fittingly, Joe Shannon has the vote ballot here in his hand. So there's Joe Shannon. All right, last but not least are the Hearts. And first, we have the Jack of Hearts. And this is, it says over here on the side, the Kansas City Star. That was the newspaper of the era. And the founder of that newspaper was William Nelson. Now, he was a little bit of a rival to Tom Pendergast, not excessively so, but as the author of the newspaper, he was also a proponent of sort of cleaning up Kansas City. So he was very critical of the debauchery and evils that he saw Tom Pendergast spreading in the area. So he was a little bit of an outspoken critic of Tom. So there is William Nelson given a place on the Jack of Hearts. Queen of Hearts was the lady who ran a notorious brothel of the area. You can see her here at the Madam Bar. She was the madam by the name of Annie Chambers. Very, very well-known brothel, actually operated just a couple of blocks away from the police station. And ironically, you can see by the cross on her neck, she was actually also a proponent of sort of getting away from the evils of society, right? Which is kind of ironic because she also ran a brothel, but she kind of had that dual-sided nature to her, and ultimately later in her life helped a lot of women get away from that sort of seedy side of life. So interesting dual life that she led. And last but not least is the King of Hearts. This was the power behind the power. He's at the corruption over here. This is Henry McElroy. He became Tom Pendergast's right-hand man, was seen as the one who basically orchestrated a lot of the crime and corruption that typified that time. He was handpicked by Tom Pendergast to be the first city manager of Kansas City and was involved in a lot of the crime that was going on. So there is Henry McElroy. So that's it. That is the last of the court cards. Now, as far as handling, this is done on a stock that you see on a lot of those Dan and Dave or Art of Play decks. It's a super thin, really super crushed stock. Beautiful handling on these. Definitely a little bit less durable of a stock just because it's so thin. But when you get it out of the box, it fans, cuts, dribbles, springs just beautifully. So no complaints on that front. I think it's a great stock. What would I use the deck for? Honestly, it's a great art deck. It's going to look great in any collection, right from that tuck case to the cards themselves. Lots to appreciate in the stories. Obviously, I'm almost 20 minutes in here. But it's also one that you could use, for gameplay. I think that would be fitting for the theme to use this for a game of poker. You could probably use this for cardistry just fine. It certainly handles well enough. So great functional deck, but also a great one if you just want to enjoy it for the art. That's it. That is this look at the Tom's Town deck. I'll put a couple links down in the description. You can still pick this up at Art of Play or at Tom's Town site if you are interested. They are still available and one absolutely worth picking up. I highly recommend it. All right, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings and let me know what else you want to see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.